Cultural habits of authoritarianism are not barrier to democratization. We first need to recognize that democratic development is always possible but never fast or easy. This is because democracy is really the complex interplay of democratic practices and culture. And the experience of countless nations, ours especially, we see that culture is not destiny. Nations of every culture, race, religion, and level of development have embraced democracy and adapted it to their own circumstances and traditions. No cultural factor has yet been a stumbling block. Not German or Japanese militarism, not Asian values, not African tribalism, not Latin Americans' alleged fondness for caudilos, not the one's specific preference for Eastern Libya.
Okay, well, um,
Yeah, that was
the
like,
the the audio is a little iffy on that in general because I it kind of came out kind of garbled, you know.
that was bad reading though, sorry.
Okay,
Okay,
I got
starter,
let's do cross, yeah.
hi. 3 minutes starting now.
All right, so your second contention basically is solvency that in fact it works, right?
Yes.
But if I showed you examples where it didn't work, could we conclude that it didn't work?
Uh, no.
So do you establish solvency with your second contention?
Yes.
So then why don't my examples prove no solvency and your examples prove solvency?
Uh, wait. You're saying you have examples, right?
Examples of attempts to promote democracy where they failed. Why doesn't that prove democracy promotion fails if your second contention proves democracy promotion succeeds?
Because the examples that I provided in my second convention are more relevant and the system of their society previously are similar to that of the Middle East. So
All right,
they're
but Courtney, give the answer that it does. It proves it's possible for it to succeed. Not guarantees that it's going to succeed every time. It's our obligation to do it well and make sure it does succeed. That's the answer you should give. Okay.
uh,
Uh, you say it's preferable to the authoritarian alternative. Aren't there other alternatives besides authoritarianism?
yes,
Okay, so is it preferable to all other alternatives?
yes.
Would it be preferable to anarcho-capitalism?
Can you explain that?
Anarcho-capitalism is basically the elimination of the state, except for a couple of key um, infrastructural roles that the government fills. But then other than that, it's basically a no government society.
Then no, democracy would still be preferable.
Democracy is still preferable or not preferable?
Still preferable.
Why is it preferable?
Because if there's a society, I mean, if there's a society with no government, then it's chaotic and there's not really a system to it. It's just literally a bunch of people living in order. Whereas with democracy, there is a government that's able to maintain order, but at the same time, it allows people to have a voice and like, yeah, like
All right. Well, you say that democracy promotion prevents ethnic cleansing.
correct.
Does that mean that when we went into Iraq to promote democracy back in the early 2000s, that we eliminated ethnic cleansing? Has that put an end to ethnic cleansing?
No,
So why do we conclude that democracy promotion ends ethnic cleansing?
well, because with this resolution, we can assume that promotion will work. Promotion of democracy will work.
All right, no, no, Courtney, no. You gotta say, you gotta be like, yeah, it's reduced it substantially. It would have been just like nonstop ethnic cleansing every minute of every day if it hadn't been for a democracy promotion.
Well, that's not. Is that actually true though?
Well, no, I mean you don't want to say it like that. You just say, well, certainly the United States has stopped it where we have found it. We, when our troops are there and we see others ethnically cleansing, we put a stop to it. That's that means if we stop even a little bit of ethnic cleansing, that's a big impact because people shouldn't be murdered just because they're the wrong race or the wrong creed or whatever. You know.
Uh,
All right. Here, let me ask you another question though. In 1B, you say only democracies are stable states. But isn't it true that China's been under the same government since 1947?
yes.
Well, they're not a
But,
democracy.
well, this part of this convention, it applies to the Middle East. So, like,
So
the
only in the
system.
Middle East are democracies more stable? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying that the system in the Middle East is different from that of China. So,
No,
yeah.
be like, well, they're look. Just because democracies are more stable than other countries doesn't mean that every single example of a democracy is stable and every single example of another kind of country is stable. We don't get to have perfect here. What we get is the best choice. The best choice is democracy because it's the most stable, not the only stable. In addition to stability, it has the additional impacts of protecting individual rights. Okay, so you say,
Uh,
you know, authoritarianism may have certain stability in terms of its uh, the transigence of its regime, right? The transigence of its regime refers to how sticky the dictator is, like how long he stays in power. So, North Korea, they have a really sticky dictator, right? That family, the Kim Jong Un family, has ruled that country since like 1950 or something. So, you would say, well, that regime is stable, but that nation state is a destabilizing force.
okay.
Distinguish between destabilization on the global scene and stability within one's own borders.
Uh,
All right, let's go on to the next thing. So it's my speech now?
yeah. Are you gonna take crap or are you just gonna go?
I'll just go. I got some cards
Okay.
here lined up for you already.
Wait. I'm trying to.
I'm going to go neg then F.
Yeah, okay. 7 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Time starts now.
Okay, let me begin with an observation. Democracy promotion necessarily includes military force in the status quo. My opponent must defend the use of military force in her democracy promotion, or else she is not being topical. Otherwise, she's just playing. If I get to make up the status quo and everything were fairies and unicorns, then democracy promotion will work. That's not good enough. She's got to defend it in the status quo. All right, so that's my first observation. My value, I will go with life, and my criterion will be promotion of liberty and long-term stability. So, my first contention is going to be the Tocqueville, and it says, "Meow." It says, "Meow." It says, "De Tocqueville, where are you?" And it says, okay, so de Tocqueville tells us that a town system relies on many factors in order to become a true democracy. Subpoint A: democracy cannot take root until who spelled this? Cannot take root until Jesus Christ, who spelled this? Until paradigm shaping of autonomous township occurs. Okay, paradigm shaping of autonomous township occurs. The town puts liberty and government within the grasp of the people, gives them an education, and creates national assemblies. Subpoint B: a town system relies on mores, laws, and circumstances and times. De Tocqueville, 2003. The town system is made up only with the support of mores, laws, circumstances, and time. I additionally want to read subpoint C is from Nutter. Okay, I'm reading Nutter F now. It's subpoint C. Nutter 2010 F. Development of democracy requires time and local control. For democracy to work, the public and politicians must be prepared to compromise on virtually all important issues. This requires that they possess a tradition of ceding power peacefully. Like the employment requirement that applicants have experience, how does one acquire this tradition? To allow the other folks to take over peacefully, the group losing power must be sure that they will not be prosecuted, persecuted, or shot by the incoming administration. In addition, office holders who lose elections need to be able to find decent alternative employment in the private sector. Thus, a prosperous middle class and significant private business sector can be important. Moreover, those who lose a vote must assume that they have a fair chance to win power in the future election. Establishing this democratic tradition takes time. In the West, it is typically developed over several centuries as small elites cede powers to other members of the well-to-do nobility, thus founding the practice of peaceful exchange of power. Between small groups of the upper class with limited power, such free transfer of authority were developed with comparative ease. Then, as the franchise spread, the habits of democracy continued and spread to other strata in the population. This is, in fact, the process that needs to take place in the Middle East. If they are going to ever achieve democracy, they must undergo this process of de Tocquevillian growth. Now, my next card is going to be, I'm going to attack the AF case, okay? So, the affirmative case starts with her values fine, her criterion stresses stability to the extent that it just stresses stability and the development of democratic values in free society. I support that, and we're on basically the same page. Okay, let me go on now to the actual answers. So, first, I'd like to point out that in response to her second contention, where she says it works, she actually provides no evidence that it does work. She provides an example where it's sort of working in one place. But there are countless examples of the contrary, and we should add up those examples, and we say that it's more likely not to work than it is to work. Additionally, I want to point out that in the status quo, the existing form of democracy promotion that we're engaging in is illegal. Treating terrorists as combatants is a mistake. Under the law of war, military service members receive several privileges. They are permitted to kill the enemy and are immune from prosecution for doing so. Our targets have no such immunity, therefore they are not combatants. The impact on this round is that it's one part of a logical proof. The government can change the laws. Thus, they always have the legal option to achieve the same results legally. So, since they cannot justify breaking the law because they could have done the same thing legally. So, if their illegal action in democracy promotion is not justified, then the benefits cannot outweigh the harm because that would in fact justify. So, as a matter of fact, we can conclude in no uncertain terms that we should not promote democracy because in the status quo that means performing persistently illegal acts and undermining the legitimacy of the United States government. Number two, subpoint 2 with a legal proof. If an illegal act is justified, it becomes legal. We have shown that drone strikes are illegal. However, if our opponents can show that this otherwise illegal act is justified, then it becomes legal. However, in order to prove justification, they must establish certain elements. The law provides a framework to adjudicate justification for illegal acts. Because we've shown the act to be illegal, we must prefer the legal framework as a means of adjudicating the issue of justification. And we can show here when, in fact, that illegal act can become legal based on Section 101, Statute 17A. Conduct that is justifiable constitutes a defense to any crime except if a person is justified in using force against another, but the person injures or creates risk of injury to third persons. So this is the problem. The United States is engaging in democracy promotion in a way that injures or creates risk of injury to third persons. Thus, it is not justifiable. Thus, it is illegal under current legislation, both international laws and common law practices. 1 minute? Okay. In order for the affirmative then to win this resolution, she's going to have to show that we are indeed faced with, number one, 6 conditions. Out of 6 conditions, we must be faced with a clear and imminent danger, and there must be a direct causal relationship between the action and the harm to be averted. And there must be no effective legal way to avert the harm. There's no way my opponent can possibly meet all 3 of these burdens because, 1, her actions are illegal. 2, there's no causal relationship between that and the harm that it purports to prevent. And 3, they have not shown that the United States is in clear and imminent danger from non-democratized countries in the Middle East. And thus it is that we must negate this resolution. I'm done. That's all I got. How much time did I leave on the clock?
Like 20 seconds.
Alright.
Alright, cross-check starting now. Okay. First, can you restate the 3 burdens that you actually have had?
Sure. Those burdens are going to be that in order for us to use violence in this capacity, we'd have to be faced with clear and imminent danger. In other words, somebody in the Middle East would have to be about to attack us. There would have to be a direct causal relationship between the action we took and the harm to be averted, and there would have to be no effective legal way to avert the harm. Since we're attacking people who aren't members of the military, it can't possibly be legal for us to do so with the military. It's a law enforcement issue.
So was your only refutation to my case that it was illegal and there was no real example that it would work?
My only refutation to your what?
My case.
Um, well, no, I mean, I showed you that, in fact, in a Tocquevillian sense, you're doomed to fail with this democracy promotion. And then I showed you that it's illegal for you to engage in democracy promotion, therefore not something we should do. And I gave you a logical proof showing that if the U.S. government wanted to make it legal, they could, and thus it makes the only possible outcome from engaging in democracy promotion in the status quo is the delegitimization of the United States government.
Okay then. Um. Okay. So in your value criteria is promotion of liberty and long-term stability. Do you specify how exactly you do that?
Yeah, we get out of their way and let them engage in go through the Tocquevillian growth process.
Okay. Um. Okay, so in your contention one subpoint B, you say that town systems are made up of mores, laws, and time, correct?
Right.
Uh, so wait, can you explain what the point of your contention, like your subpoint B was?
Well, it just shows you that we can't, those are not things we can buy, right? We can't spend money to buy a change in political philosophy within the average person in the Middle East. We can't change their mores. We can't change their beliefs. We can't buy, let's buy 100 years having passed. We can't do that. We just have to let the time pass, and we have to let those mores change naturally as they develop the habits of democracy.
Okay. Okay, 3 minutes of prep.
Okay.
What?
You're going to take prep, you said?
Yeah, before 3. Like total
Oh,
minutes.
you could, let's do 4.
Okay. Take running prep. Starting
All
now.
right, yeah.
Jeez, I don't know what to say. What? Is it actually though? Is it actually illegal or is it like
You should say, why is this, unpause. You
what?
should say, I'm talking to my computer. You should
Oh.
say that, well, if it is illegal, that doesn't make any difference because the Iraq War was technically legal and, or sort of. I mean, I would say, look, if promoting democracy is illegal and delegitimizes the U.S. government, then the United States government has no legitimacy left because it's been promoting democracy since the end of World War II. There's no impact then. He claims that we can't possibly do it if it's illegal, but If it is illegal, then we've been engaging in the same illegal behavior since the end of World War II, and it hasn't caused us any delegitimization yet. Or if it has, then it's caused all the harm it could have. I mean, either it delegitimizes very, very slowly, or it has used up all of our legitimacy, and so we're just already acting illegitimately. We might as well, right? And then, but see, in response to that, I'm going to say, well, that's why we should go with my counter plan, which is um,
Just,
change.
randomly bring up a counterclaim.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be a counter plan. You'd say, well, but if we do it in the status quo, the way that she suggests, we won't be accounting for the reality that the government could change the laws such as to make it legal first, and they have chosen not to. So my opponent has to argue in a status quo in which Congress has actively chosen not to do the simple step that they could engage in to make legal the behavior that she's advocating they take. She needs to advocate that first. She didn't advocate that first, and she can't be on it now, like that, you know.
But I mean, if it's an act, it's already that simple. Like, it wouldn't have much impact whether you're supposed to do it or not, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I'm ready. Is this 4 minutes? Yeah? Yeah?
I think so.
Fine. I'm going to go with the half-baked communication. So, start time now. Okay. So with the framework, my opponent agrees with my framework, or like at least supports it. So we don't really have much to talk about there. So going on. So basically, my opponent says that the promotion of democracy first would not necessarily work because he says that I provide no real example that it would work. However, he provides numerous examples of how it failed. And then he also says that even if it did work, it would be an illegal act. Um, she says it would be illegal to promote democracy. However, we have already engaged in the promotion of democracy. So whether it's illegal or not, it hasn't impacted the way our country's government has been functioning. So it doesn't have any impact um, on like the, as he puts it, legitimizing or delegitimizing of our country's government. Uh, Going on to where he says it won't necessarily work. Well, as long as there's a possibility that it works, then there's no reason why the U.S. shouldn't try to promote democracy. Yeah, because yeah. Um.
No, court.
So going on to yeah. Okay. So
Pause
then I put
time. Pause time. Pause time. What is that last thing you said to me? Say that again.
you mean about the work thing?
Right before what you were just getting into, but
Yeah.
after, so there's very little impact of it because it's illegal. Between those two things.
Uh. Says I said that as long as it's like there's still a possibility that it will work.
Oh right. Okay. You need to explain that better. You need to say my example, which he apparently concedes is an example since he's talking about it as though it were. Um, proves in no uncertain terms that it's possible to do democracy promotion correctly and well. We are advocating for that kind, or I am, sorry, I keep thinking PF, but I am advocating for that kind of democracy promotion. Right?
Uh,
Because remember, if it never worked, there wouldn't be an example of it working.
So do you want me to like elaborate on that more?
Yeah, well, when you give your answer to that, you say, look, my opponent seems to be missing the point. I don't need to provide proof that democracy promotion always works. I need to provide an example where it has worked and is working, because that provides us the model and gives us the information we need to know how to approach it going forward so that it does work in the other places.
Hi.
All right? Go ahead. Resume time. Huh?
You want me to like redo that point? Like that one?
Yeah, start back at that point and then go forward from there. And then resume time when you get to the end of that point.
Oh, okay. So okay. So for his second refutation against my case, he said that there was no real example that I provided that it didn't necessarily work because he provided numerous examples where the promotion of democracy failed. However, he as long as there's a possibility that it works, then it's okay to be able to promote it because I've already provided an example where in a society the promotion of democracy did work, and in this resolution, the affirmative is advocating for the promotion of that kind of democracy, the democracy where it will work. Yeah. Okay. Resuming time. Okay. So going on to the neg case. So for his first observation where he says the promotion of democracy must use force, that is correct. However, when promoting democracy, we will only use the necessary amount of force that it takes to be able to promote democracy. So like it is not like it's not like we're going to be using an excessive amount of force because that would be unnecessary.
Don't
And
concede
only,
that. Coordinate pause time. Don't concede that you have to advocate for military force. You
but don't we?
No. You say, look, we do have to take some sort of actual action, but that could be, for example, a foreign aid bill that says you will get Egypt this much money, but only if you hold your election by this date and it's verified as free and fair. That could be an example of democracy promotion. Okay?
Okay.
So don't
So
concede that you have to use violence to promote democracy.
okay.
But see, here's the thing about it. If you're facing that, you say, okay, so then what happens when we give them that $1 billion and then they don't follow the rules that we set out for it and they just steal it? Do we get it back, or we just say, oops, they stole from us. I guess we can't do anything about it because they're so tough. What do we do?
Use force.
We have to use force to get it back, right? If we're going to set up rules, if we're going to make resources contingent upon their behaving a certain way, we have to be able to enforce those rules in some way. If we tell them, okay, look, they're like, well, we really want to be a democracy, but our security is too poor. We have too many militant groups, too many Islamist militant groups. We need to make sure our election day is able to proceed without violence. Can you help us, America? Well, what are they going to do? America's already sent $10 billion over there to help them set up their election. Now, are we just going to let militant groups disrupt the election and waste all of our $10 billion? Or should we back it up with troops, too? Either way, you've got a bad situation. Either you are going to use force, or yes, you're going to be completely vulnerable to abuse at all times. Because the only other way to accomplish anything is to spend money or to sanction. Okay, I mean, you could sanction them, but I mean, I think with democracy,
Actually, wouldn't it be necessary for to use force in the promotion of democracy? Like, isn't that kind of like inevitable?
isn't what necessary?
The use of force.
Oh, well, not. I mean, look, after World War II, the United States had troops in Japan, right? And they set up a democracy in Japan. But they never they never had to fight any battles with any Japanese people.
Mhm.
They were there, but there was no use of force.
Well, I mean, there was a threat of force.
Right, but I think the Japanese people and probably the U.S. soldiers at the time will probably both tell you the same thing, which is for at least that brief period of time after World War II, or late 40s, early 50s, the U.S. and Japan, the U.S. and the Japanese people more or less wanted the same thing. That um, that there wasn't a groundswell of resistance against democracy, in part because the emperor himself had told the country, like, we have to give in or whatever. I don't remember exactly what he said. He said some stuff. he said some stuff in Japanese. It sounded like like that.
That's kind of angry for surrender, but
Well, it's angry Japanese man. That's the only kind of Japanese I know how to speak is angry Japanese. Um, okay, Court. So where are we? What's going on here? I'm lost.
I was repeating your case. I was on your observation
And then
one.
I paused time again, and then I got off topic.
Yep.
Okay, resume
Oh,
time.
oh,
My
oh,
bad.
wait,
Oh,
no. So, I mean, technically, your observation one about, like, the must use force thing in the promotion of democracy, technically, isn't that true, or at least, like, the threat of force? Because otherwise, I mean, there's no, like, you're not, yeah.
well, I mean, what I would say if I were answering that is, it is true that in the status quo, some of the democracy promotion that the United States does is use of force. There is no reason to think that in order to affirm this resolution, in order to affirm the principle of taking action to promote democracy in other countries, that we have to defend every possible action that any American administration, no matter how ill advised the reasoning behind it, might take. That's not the case. We don't have to defend Abu Ghraib. Abu Ghraib may be an example of democracy promotion, but it's not something we have to defend.
Yeah,
You know what Abu Ghraib is, right?
I think so, yeah.
What do you think it is?
uh,
It's a prison, okay? It's
oh,
a
I thought it was a scenario.
No, Abu Ghraib is a prison that the United States maintained during the Iraq War, where they put so-called terrorists or people they thought might be terrorists.
It sounds
Okay?
like the whole witch thing.
Well, but look, what happened, and they put them in there, is they abused the shit out of them, basically. And there,
That
a bunch
sounds
of
even more like the whole witch thing.
a bunch of pictures came out with them like humiliating the prisoners and torturing them and stuff. So, um,
That's pretty. That's
it was ugly, right? It was an ugly black mark on America, and um, well, you want to make the point though that you might have to defend about things like bad things like that happening as a consequence of democracy promotion if your opponent can establish that in fact that's not just a fluke one-time mistake, but that represents an inevitable consequence of this behavior. If your opponent can establish that, then fine. Otherwise, certainly don't need to defend it.
okay, but
Look, Corday, if I said we should,
your observation is just it's literally saying that the use of force is inevitable if there's this promotion of democracy. Since
right, but
technically,
why are you accepting that though? Why are you accepting my
uh,
observation? It's designed to help me win, not you, right?
yeah, but it's true, right?
Courtney, true. Yeah, I mean, no, I think it kind of is true, but it depends on how you define democracy and promotion, and it depends on lots of things. No, it's not true. Look, you want to say that there's lots of different ways we promote democracy, not just militarily, that it's conceivable to come up with a set of sort of natural incentives that would incentivize democracy without committing any of our troops, and that that's what we should be doing. That you get to advocate as the app whatever you want. You could run a plan if you wanted to. Okay, you don't have to. You don't have to defend this whole resolution thing. The way I'm positioning it is LD is suddenly whole resolution focused like PF, and you have to prove the resolution true or false. That's not the case. LD is not constrained in that fashion like PF, and you can run a plan if you wanted to. We're not running a plan, but what I want you to point out is that you you absolutely do not have to defend every possible example of democracy promotion to suggest that we ought to promote democracy any more than if I say, oh, we should discipline our children, and Joe defines disciplining his children. He takes his child outside and chains him to a tree and hits him with a baseball bat. Well, does that mean I have to defend that in order to defend the idea that one ought to discipline one's children?
Okay, I see your point.
Right.
Okay, we do that.
Okay, so what are we on now? What's going on?
I finished refuting your reputation to my case, and now I'm refuting your case.
All right, go ahead.
Uh, timer. Okay. Viewing time. Now. Alright. So, to my opponent's observation where he says that democratic promotion must use force, I do not agree with this observation because force is not the only way to promote democracy, and there are other types of, there are other ways or techniques or whatever to promote democracy without the use of force. Going on to my opponent's framework, so his value is life. I have the same values, so there's no conflict there. His value criterion is the promotion of liberty and long-term stability. However, by going under my value criterion of influencing youth regimes to move towards democratization, we achieve his value criterion of promotion of liberty and long-term stability. Going on to my opponent's contention one. Basically so he only has one thing left to do is subpoints A, B, and C. So subpoint A is that there in order to have democracy we need autonomous town chiefs. Subpoint B is that town systems are made up of mores, laws, and time, and his subpoint C is that the development of democracy requires time. Uh uh However, since I've already refuted his point against my case, I prove that the promotion of democracy will work in the Middle East. So his points about autonomous town shaping are irrelevant now because there's the promotion of democracy a more efficient way to is is a more efficient way that will result in democracy. You good?
Okay, are you done?
Yeah.
All right. What happens now? What? How long is the speech I have?
Wait, let me think. Six? Six. Wait, yes, six.
Okay. 6 minutes, you said?
Yep.
All right. Um. Well, go ahead and start my timer. Say time starts now whenever you're ready to.
Um, 6 minutes. Start now.
Okay, so let me go over my own case first. She basically hinges her entire attack on my case upon a single argument, which is that because she has an example of democracy promotion working, apparently, that she can conclude that democracy promotion is a possible solution to non democratic authoritarianism. That would be the case, except I never conceded, actually, that it was a legitimate example of democracy promotion working. I merely conceded that democracy was developing there and that democracy promotion simultaneously had been ongoing. But there's no reason for us to conclude, actually, that democracy promotion had anything to do with the democracy development in that particular scenario in which my opponent presents. In fact, that scenario could just as easily be an example of a society going through the de Tocquevillian process and be proof of the impossibility of achieving democracy otherwise. She's provided no evidence to the contrary, and therefore my warrant, which goes unchallenged except by this example, stands. Because that warrant stands, her entire case is now in the trash can, because we have established in no uncertain terms that the Middle East must have time, a process including city-states and the development of national habits of democracy, or mores, in order to become a truly democratic state. She hasn't answered this yet. She can't answer it now. She has ignored the warrant. She tried to dodge it with simply pointing out that her example so supposedly proves the possibility to succeed, but it does no such thing because she never established it's not a correlation. She never established a causal relationship between the two. As far as I know, it's just correlative, and it's proof of my side of the flow, not hers. Okay, so now that we've established that her case is toast, there's no reason ever to affirm. We should negate. But just in case we had any confusion about that, let's go on to her case again and her answers to my answers. So she is saying that no, democracy promotion does not have to use force, that it could, in fact, manifest in a number of possible ways, and that any of those legitimate ways to affirm. Okay, but the problem that she has is, number one, she doesn't suggest any alternative ways other than the status quo manner of democracy promotion. In fact, she quotes from status quo promoters of the way of democracy promotion as done now. Condoleezza Rice is heavily featured in her case. She's a big advocate of neoliberalism. She is yet my opponent is trying to say, well, we don't need to necessarily take a neoliberalist approach to democracy promotion. Well, that's what the term means. Neoliberals made up that term. So obviously, to the extent that she's going to be advocating for its advancement, she's going to be advocating the neoliberal position, which is very hawkish, very warlike, and full of guns and blood. So I think it's bad, and you should too. Now, let's move forward on to the reason why it is not a preferable alternative. It's not as preferable to the alternative. She doesn't consider any alternatives. She says it's preferable to authoritarianism. I agree. It's preferable to authoritarianism in the sense that anything that's not authoritarianism is pretty much preferable to it, because being not authoritarianism means it affords individual liberty. So there's no doubt that democracy is preferable to authoritarianism, but she doesn't consider any other possible options like constitutional monarchy, anarcho-capitalism, I don't know, Athenian democracy maybe, like city-state voting, or it could be post-democratic internet mob rule. I mean, any number of possible things. It could be an enlightened philosopher king, a la Aristotle or Plato. She doesn't actually compare against any other alternatives, so how she can possibly make the claim that it's preferable to the alternatives is beyond me. Given that she's failed to support it, we have to knock that off the flow. That means it's not preferable to the alternatives, which means, of course, that it is, in fact, unpreferable to the alternatives. The alternatives are preferable to it, and the alternatives are everything but her case. So vote for me, vote for the nay. I'm going to win this round. Why? Because I've shown you that if we want a stable Middle East that is prosperous, free, and our friend, then we must get out of their way and let the de Tocquevillian growth process occur naturally. I've shown you that even if I'm wrong about that, all she is going to do is advocate pointless violence with no solvency. She hasn't established any solvency. You have one example of a weak correlation between where we supposedly promoted democracy and democracy occurred, which is actually more likely to be an example of the de Tocquevillian process that I established in my case, and it really only proves the neg side of the position here. So as a consequence, Judge, it's going to be a clear neg ballot, and you're going to give me 30 speaker points. Now, my opponent, she's done a pretty good job. I think you give her 28.4. Okay, you know what? If she concedes the round. Now, if she doesn't concede the round, I think judges should give her 25. I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. If she concedes the round, she should get 29.5. How much time do I have left?
You still have 30 seconds.
Okay, all right, here we go. I was just joking about all that last stuff, Judge, about the speaker points and everything. So just ignore that. That's not really on the flow. Okay, so I want to go over this stability thing, the link to stability. See, this is a core The core problem my opponent has is she is counting on this. Actually, she's taking cause of things to be more stable when it actually destabilizes it. History proves I'm right, she's wrong, I win. There, I'm done.
Okay. Well, I mean, do I concede that the example is not like a solid
No,
one, or do I just
no,
I
no,
mean, do I just
Courtney.
continue to go off the basis that it isn't like a legit example? Like, I mean,
Yes, you
what?
do go off the basis this is a legit example. You say, okay, so now my opponent's backpedaling and claiming that, oh, it's just a correlation. It's just a correlation. He never made that argument in his actual response to the rebuttal speech. Now he's just pulling back and shifting ground to avoid actually having to address the thing and try to get off the floor without actually answering it. That's what you say about what I just did.
Yeah, but whether it's a legit example or not, does it really matter? Because I mean, as long as it's possible that it works, I mean, like,
Right, but I'm saying it's not a legit example now, right? I just said no. All she did is establish a correlation. There's no causal relationship between the democracy promotion she establishes and the democracy. So first I said, um, oh yeah, well that's an example, but it's just one example. Okay. Then you said, well, it only takes one example to prove something true, to prove something
what is the
possible,
thing?
to prove something possible. Okay. It only takes one example of it happening to prove something possible. And then I said, I shifted ground. See?
The example's not legit. Well, okay. Well, technically, with my argument, it doesn't really matter whether. I mean, obviously, it's better if we take that as a legit example. But if you had actually proven that that wasn't a legit example, does it really matter? Because as long as it's possible, then
Well, it depends what you're trying to make it a legit example for, right? If you're only trying to make it a legit example for it being possible, then you need to show that there's more than just a weak correlation, right? You can't say that, look, here's a democracy, therefore democracy promotion works. That's not enough to prove democracy promotion works, right? If I say, here is a democracy, it's England. See, democracy promotion works. What do you say?
as an egg or as an apple.
If I'm telling you that as an app person, you're on egg. I say, look, here's a democracy, a good democracy. It's Canada. See, democracy promotion works.
You didn't necessarily use the notion of democracy while trying to achieve democracy in Canada.
What? I can't hear you. Say it louder.
You didn't necessarily use the promotion of democracy, that process, while trying to achieve democracy in Canada.
Courtney, why so weak in your expression of this? Nobody promoted democracy in Canada. Is the correct answer.
I did!
No, you said some mushy soft stuff. Okay, the answer is, are you insane? Nobody promoted democracy in Canada. That's the answer. Not, well, I don't think necessarily that maybe people didn't actually do anything. Nobody effing promoted democracy in Canada. That's the answer.
I said a very version of the answer.
I mean, yes, but Courtney, seriously though, right? If somebody is trying to tell you something like that, because some people will try to tell you shit like that, right? I would totally try to tell you something like that, and I'd get some mushy answer like that out of you because you're assuming I'm not just saying complete bullshit at you, right? You're giving my bullshit too much credit. Okay? You got no. If you trust your instincts, you know that argument is weak sauce, and I want you to show that.
Well, 1 second, turn on the light. Okay, the night is late. The light is now. Okay.
All right. So what are we on now?
My last speech.
Oh yeah. Okay, go.
Oh, okay. Wait, let me make. Oh, okay. Wait. Ah, 3 minutes. Starting. Wait. I'm going on the neg case and then the F case. What? Time starts now. Okay, so for the next case, so in terms of framework, my opponent didn't really say anything else about that. So, yeah. But either way, our frameworks are really similar, so it doesn't really matter which one you go by, Judge. So against what I said for his case, my opponent said he never conceded that my example was an actual example of democracy promotion, and yeah, okay. However, in his first rebuttal speech, he'd already the only way he discredited my example was that I only had one example, whereas he had various examples, and so yeah, that was great. Sorry. So Judge, don't allow him to shift his refutation to that by saying that it's not a legit example anymore. Uh, so yeah, okay.
But also explain that it is legit. He's,
What?
first of all, don't let him shift ground and claim that it's not valid on legitimacy grounds. But second of all, it absolutely is legitimate because I provide evidence of it, and all he says is, "Well, that's just evidence."
Okay. Are you on pause right now?
I paused the video because it makes your video come through stream a little bit better.
Oh, okay. Because I was like,
It's less choppy. It's less choppy when there's just one video stream going.
okay.
Okay.
You want me to like redo that argument and like
Yeah.
no, just keep going?
Yeah. Start this speech over.
Ah! Okay. 3 minutes starting now. I'm gonna go no same order. Now you can okay, starting now. Okay, so in terms of framework, my opponent didn't really say anything. It doesn't really matter though because our frameworks are really similar. So either way, either framework, whatever either side's framework you go by, Judge, it doesn't really matter. So against my refutation to his case, where I provide an example and how that's like since because there is an example of it actually working, as long as you go by that, as long as we promote the kind of democracy where it works as an approved in that example, then that would be more efficient than any de Tocqueville process that he brings up. However, he says that he never conceded that my example was a legit example of democracy promotion. However, first of all, you cannot allow him to shift his refutation or argument because in his first
Shift ground. I'm shifting ground.
I'm sorry. So in his first speech or his first like in his first rebuttal speech, he says that the way he discredited my argument was because I only had one example of where democracy works, where he has various examples, and so Judge, don't allow him to shift ground and say that now it's not a legit example because then that'd be like that's yeah just don't yeah okay going past this
And no, and it is legit.
I'm getting to that. Okay, so past this example where he shifts ground, further, it actually is a legit example as I provide evidence in my contention. Yeah, okay. Going on to where
You'd probably want to read a little chunk of that again, just for reference. Don't do it necessarily right now, but you probably would in an actual speech here. Okay? I hope you pause time.
part of the contention where I show that's true.
Yeah, just say like I've read a piece of evidence that says blah 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 blah.
Okay, so like for
And
example, like in the contention.
and all he did was just say he just sort of brushed it away with a wave of his hand. Well, that's just a correlation. Well, it's a lot stronger than what he's got, you know. Yeah, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it. Take it. Put extra 30 seconds on or whatever, you know.
Okay. Okay. So my opponent just brushes it off and says it's not a legit example. First of all, that's shifting his ground. Don't allow him to do that. Second of all, it is an real example as I provide evidence of my contention. Wait, let me find it.
That's why we got this stuff printed out.
Actually, I don't know where to. Wait.
That's why we got this stuff printed out. But it says.
I can't find it in the part. Wait. Actually, technically, you're right because this literally.
Our ability to enhance the peaceful political and economic development of weak and poorly governed states can be considerable. Read that part. It is, and then you say, Democratic development is a unified political economic model, and it offers a mix of flexibility and stable stability. You know, read that part. You say it's a global economic model. We have evidence right here that states clearly it's a political global economic model that we have a substantial ability to influence. So we need to. That's why we vote for me. You know.
What card are you reading from right
Uh, Condoleezza Rice B.
now? What?
B. It's under Nutter C, which is under contention 3. But you,
Oh.
but look,
Oh.
you can point to South Korea and Japan and post World War II Germany as examples of democracy promotion working as well. It's just old examples. They're old examples, but they're in there. And the one you were reading, the democracy promotion works we can see working right now worldwide. Well, that part, we can see it working right now worldwide part is not really what this card says. It's just a random claim that's being made here.
Probably change that.
Well, I mean, you would say, yeah, you probably want to change that or get rid of that card, replace it with something better.
Yeah. I
Let's
mean,
find let's find something better to put it there.
literally from the same source, so I might as well take some cards out. Not all of them are actually.
Right. Well, Nutter is another possible way to get there, but let me see here. U.S.
I feel like Nutter would be a better card for you than. Yeah, I think.
All right. Well, look. Regardless, let's go ahead and finish this speech at this point. But what I would say is there's this interesting thing here. Just give it a second to open. All right, so let me send you a link. This is potentially a useful link in chat, and I'll get you a second link as well. All right, so this one here is excellent for the affirmative side for that kind of stuff, okay? Go for that second link. All right, I'm going to stop the... Did you get the second link?
For what?
In chat. Can you find the GoToMeeting chat?
There's a chat? What?
Yep.
Okay, wait. Found it.
Okay, the second link, okay? I'm going to stop the video now. Thanks for being here talking with famous people, Courtney. I think you did a great job. I think we know where we need, you know, don't be weaker than you need to be is the moral of today's lesson, right? You're positioning yourself as weaker than you actually are, and don't be fooled by nonsense is the other lesson.